I'm guessing that some of you know right away what this thing is. This is an attachment called a Polyphone attachment. It was marketed in 1898, 1899 by the Talking Machine Company of Chicago. Not to be confused with the Chicago Talking Machine Company, that's a different thing. But this company marketed this attachment here for several different phonographs. And you can tell right away what's up with it. I've got two horns. There are actually two reproducers here in line with each other, so that as it's playing, they're both playing in the same groove. This way, the idea was that it would sound like double the volume. I don't know if it actually quite got there. But an interesting thing happens because the grooves aren't, the needles aren't in the exact same position. There's a lag between one and the other. So it's sort of like a little bit like an echo effect, but does make it sound bigger and fills the room a little bit better. It was a nice little attachment for $15. Good luck finding one at that price today. These things are exceedingly rare, and when you hear it, you'll hear how interesting it sounds. These are two horns that are about the right type of horn for this machine. It would have come, this reproducer combo would have come with horns, something very similar to that. The machine I've got this on is a square top standard, so it's the first version of the standard, and it's also the earliest version of the square top standard, with just the two clips, one on each side, as opposed to two on the front and two on the back. So we'll come up closer and you'll get to see the reproducer up close. They're actually a little more complicated than you'd expect, because getting the two needles or the two styla in line in the same groove is not so easy. I mean, you could lock them together, but then there'd be no sideways play. And you need a little bit of sideways play, or it'll be riding on one side of the groove or the other and ruin the records rather quickly. So you got this fine line of being able to move a little bit one way or the other, but still keeping them both in line on the same groove. So they're a little bit fussy. And so when you see underneath it, you'll see how complicated it is. I've got a couple of them to show you. I've got one here on a spring motor Edison phonograph, which has a Polyphone attachment. And I've got one on here on a very special Edison home phonograph. This is the early home phonograph called the Suitcase Home. This one's extra special though, because it was used as probably a demonstration or exhibition outfit. And if I get the lid off, you'll see the bed plate has been decorated by someone, probably kind of like a homemade job. And on the back, there's an advertisement for the Polyphone attachment. You might have seen this exact machine in one of the books by Tim Fabrizio and George Paul. They highlighted it because it is really kind of a special machine. As I said, it's a square, it's a Suitcase Edison home. This was really Edison's first really successful machine. It was just about perfection, really. The spring motor, the motor in it seemed to work once, they settled after the first few initial versions of it. And as a machine, it lasted many years with slight modifications. So this was kind of Edison's workhorse machine along with the standard. So let's take a close look at these reproducers that are so highly valued by collectors. Here's the Edison standard with a Polyphone. You can see it's quite a pretty little mechanism. It's all nickel plated. You can see the two reproducers, and they look like the early automatic reproducer because that's the era that these things came out in. And they look like automatic reproducers, but there have been some adjustments you'll see on the bottom. This is a beautiful machine though. 2-clip standard. Wow. Over here, I've got the Edison Polyphone Home I was talking about. And then you can see the double reproducers, the Polyphone. And look at the decorations on this. Someone's added that. They did an okay job, I guess. I mean, it's not the prettiest take on a machine, but you know what? It was done back in that era. That's what makes it special. I mean, this was done by someone who wanted to show this machine off and make it extra special. And they did a really good job on the lid here. And on the other side of the lid, you can see the Edison red home banner, which is really nice. This machine's in great shape. There's the ID tag. And then over here, I've got I got a third one. This one's here on a spring motor, so it's a bigger carriage with the 2 reproducers. This machine's really nice. The serial number is really low, C163. Okay, let's look at the underside of one of these carriages, and then we'll listen to it. Here's the underside. You can see it's a little more complicated than maybe you'd expect. You can see the first stylus and the second stylus. The tabs on each one are joined together, and it's this little complicated arrangement to keep them lined up but still allow them to move sideways somewhat. So let's hear it.
I'm old, but I'm awfully tough. Sung by Andrew Keith and the Sun Records. I'm a jolly old fellow way back in New England where apples and peaches and pumpkins do grow. Where the girls, they are handsome, the boys, they're likewise. For the shame of what I have done, I take you to see the next one to see. Sit down and the great Union Star. I came for the ride in your Lexington cars and work at your vertical bar.
I don't know how that sounded to you, but in here, live, actually hearing it, it sounded amazing. It's a bit like you're hearing it in an auditorium with a little bit of echo, but it makes it sound so much bigger than it usually does. And the volume, yeah, it was pretty good. So for, what was it, $15, you could add one of these to your machine and make it sound really interesting. And to have 3 of them all together at the same time on one table, and one on such a spectacular Polyphone home, and a 2-clip square box standard, and a spring motor machine with such a low serial number, I mean, it doesn't get any better than this collection right here.